Well, greetings again, friends. Here to share the second instructional lesson based upon our nation being one nation under God with respect to this time of year because we are celebrating the movement that led to us becoming our very own country and, of course, the freedoms that this nation does provide to us. This time we're going to discuss to help clarify the confusion that many people seem to have about the very government that we have our freedom under. And really, I think they should do more in schools to teach in like civics and government. Well, they pretty much did away with civics, but in government to teach you exactly what it is, how it works, how things are supposed to be, so that you can understand what it means to be a citizen of the United States. Now, it has been getting shouted about quite a bit about, oh, democracy, and our democracy, it needs to be preserved. The democracy is being destroyed, as well as a lot of accusations thrown in there about how the U.S. has become a dictatorship and it now has a king. Monarchy would be the term for that government. And when you get straight down to it, neither one of those is correct. Yes, the what government we have does have some aspects of democracy in it, but that is not the descriptor that needs to be used to describe what we actually have. Hey, but that's what we're here for. Learning and understanding requires truth and requires the ability to be taught, the ability to listen. At one time, biblically, Israel wanted a king. Oh, all these other nations have kings. We want a king too. And their king was supposed to be different than all the others because instead of ruling with an iron fist, which is what most monarchies do, using force, using censorship, and any means necessary to stamp out dissent, well, their king was supposed to first and foremost honor the will and the ways of God. His word was to be the guide for their country. Not all the kings they had through the years did honor it, though, and guess what happened? It often brought troubles when they chose, you know what, we don't need God. We know better than God. We don't have to listen to God. It brought troubles and chaos upon their nation. If one doesn't understand how the government is supposed to run, especially with respect to the source of ultimate freedom, then, in the end, country might run for a while, but it's not going to end well. Be that a nation whose God is the Lord, which was what Israel was known as, or as we call ourselves in the United States, one nation under God. The Bible, it tells us some stuff about when it comes to worldly government, the way that we, under that government, are supposed to behave, what should be expected of citizens of the government. In Matthew 22, verses 15 through 22, you could read that and find that's where Jesus, when he was questioned about the taxation, he said, hey, we should render unto Caesar, render unto the government, the governmental authority, what is theirs, and to God, what is his. So we are to respect the things that the government asks of us, whether it's big, whether it's small, unless what they are doing violates our ultimate authority's regulation, and we know that is God's authority. And you see that throughout Old Testament and New Testament, where they made stands against the rulers of the nation because, no, hey, look, we ain't going to do that. That is wrong before God, and we have no part of that. 1 Timothy 2, verses 1 through 4 tell us, hey, you should pray for the leaders. You should petition God on behalf of them and give thanks to God for all other people, but especially for our leadership. Why? So that we can live a peaceful life as Christians. Because what's going to happen if we have evil rulers in place who absolutely hate God. They are going to try to silence Christians. They are going to try to persecute Christians. They are going to try to make it a crime to actually stand up and speak the truth and the gospel. And if you have that choice that you got to listen to what the government says or what God told us to do about sharing the truth, well, we should be listening to what God has to say. Showing care and respect to them is good in God's sight. And it shows his truth because what? He wants all people to come to know him and be saved. And if we don't show the care, the love, the respect, and do things the way God says, stand for what is right, but as long as what they're telling us doesn't violate what God says you should do or should not do, then we should respect what they are doing. 1 Peter 2, verses 13 and 14 tell us, submit ourselves for the Lord's sake to human institutions, such as a leader or one in authority. Could be a mayor, could be a king, could be just your supervisor at work. That they're the ones that are sent by God and are there to punish evildoers and praise those who are right. That's why we're praying, like we just read a minute ago, praying for, petitioning God for, so that we get the godly leadership. Because guess what? If they are an evil and corrupt ruler, then they're not going to punish evildoers. They're going to say, oh, they're doing evil, so what? We support them. They're supposed to be there to punish evildoers and praise the ones who are doing right. If the ruler is corrupt or they're pushing an evil, anti-godly agenda, then that's where the Matthew 22 we just talked about comes, or even the famous statement by the disciples when they were faced with that type of situation in Acts chapter 5, verse 29, and they were commanded, no, you can't do this. You can't speak Jesus anymore. We don't want you doing this. And they said, we should obey God rather than men. His authority is higher than any country's authority, than any nation's, than any supervisors, than any jobs. He is the ultimate authority. And face it, in the end, when the end of your life comes, you're not going to have to stand before, say, your manager at Walmart, or your boss at the gas station, or maybe your CEO of your company to answer for the life you led. You're going to stand before God. He's going to be the ultimate authority, and in the end, the ultimate judge. So let's get to some good descriptions here. Democracy, since that's mentioned so much, it's a form of government where the ultimate rule is by the people, and government officials are elected to serve at the majority of the citizens' vote. If it is done correctly, because any form of government can be done wrong, but if done correctly, principles of equality will develop, and respect for the rights of each individual within the community will be seen. That applies to all citizens. So no ideals of any one person or any group can be forced upon those who don't believe in it in a democracy. They can share it, they can talk about it, they can try to convince you to come to their side, but you cannot be forced to have it thrown in your face, which says a lot about what's going on in our country. Democracy is not what's going on. Individuals in a democracy are free to share what they believe, but at the same time, all other citizens of the country or city or wherever this democracy is set up at, whatever size, are free to say, well, that's nice, but I don't accept that and I believe it's wrong. They're allowed to do that. That equality also would stop it there, rather than progress to violence or rage. That's assuming someone was actually trying to do democracy the right way. Some of the earliest questions is, how large of an area is this democracy going to serve? An organization? A city? A country? Then which among the populace of that area should count as the demos, the people? Many would say children, with their lack of experience in the world and their level of understanding haven't been completely developed, should not be allowed to vote. But then again, it's the citizens and a majority of the citizens who decide who can. Can outsiders? Can people from other cities, other countries who have no positive vested interest in the area, the country, the business, the city, just drop in and go, oh, you need some votes? Okay, come on, y'all just come in and vote. Or for who will run the area? For who's going to make the decisions? I mean, these people don't live there. These people are part of it. But in a pure democracy, if the majority ruled that they could, well, then they can. No matter what kind of untold chaos and confusion gets generated by it. But sometimes people don't make good decisions, and hey, chaos and confusion become part of it. If they wanted that to happen, they wanted to see everything disintegrate, well, then it would be so if the majority said so. Then it gets even more prone to see chaos develop in the democracy, because when the citizenry are very divided on issues, as well any fair to bigger group of humans are very likely to be, well, then whose views will prevail? If the majority vote rule, do those citizens who disagree with the majority rule, do they ever get the chance to be heard? Do they ever get a voice? Are they going to be given any power at all to block or overcome or protest the majority rule? And then who constitutes a majority? And when is it constituted a majority? Are we going to say it's when we have 51% of the vote, or we got to wait till we have at least 65% or better of the vote? When is it going to happen? Is it going to be all citizens, or say a majority of legitimate voters? Should proper difference be given instead, not to the individuals, but to groups or associations based on their heritage, or maybe the area that they live in, or a particular political party they're associated with, to make those valued as a better vote than this other citizen because of their status or what they've acquired, or just who they are, the name that they belong to, or family? Those type of things are all going to be considered in a democracy. The weakness, though, of a pure democracy is that when you have people who they desire, want to seek power, they can easily corrupt citizens and the processes into something that takes away the integrity of the voting process and perverts the truth behind individual rights, including things like property ownership, to the point that in the end, the government controls the majority of everything, and they, instead of being at the behest of the will of the people, are the ones who are now being turned to for the privileges that the people need as they gain this power to control them. The people, even if voting is kept around, the power of the votes ends up getting diminished, as it has in many socialist countries over the years, or even completely erased, as with advanced socialism, aka communism. Now, to the kings, in a monarchy or an oligarchy, the power rests solely in the hands of an individual or in a small elite group. This is also not the type of government the United States has. Be they a king, a queen, an emperor, or even, say, a high council, like a small group of elites running everything. The point being the distinct earmarks that the citizens are required to obey. They have no say in who rules or who will rule. It often ends up becoming either a hereditary position. Oh, well, like a king gives it to the firstborn son, or say that council of elites decides who they are going to add into their number when a position needs to be filled. Those kind of rulers, their power is considered absolute. Though there are often agencies and there are court systems and military for the nations, they answer first and foremost to their leader. If a nation gets a bad one, a dictator, then the citizens will not even be permitted to speak out. They won't get to protest. They won't be able to stand up and speak against the government. They won't be able to oppose what's going on, because if they are, then the ruler is going to make examples of them, often through atrocities in many cases, and that's been proven over the years. Rebellious leaders or city-states within a country will often be crushed without an ounce of mercy. All citizens were oppressed by the control of the ruling class. You towed the line or you were going to regret it. Now, to us, the United States, here is what we actually have. We have a unique system of governance that's known as a constitutional republic. It does have, as I said, a number of concepts that are taken from the tenets of a democracy, yet has created an entirely different system. It does still have the fact that representatives are elected by the citizens of the country to make decisions on their behalf and are only supposed to serve as long as the citizens say they can serve. However, to prevent a totalitarian dictator-like person seizing the power of the country, powers and limitations of the government and responsibilities of both government and the citizens are put forth in a hard copy written constitution to be the base law of the land for that area. In our particular case, we're referring to a country, the whole of the United States. But many agencies, businesses, and even churches typically have some type of working guideline, bylaws, or other type of rules that govern their particular sphere of operation, yet not violate the principles of this country. A constitutional republic's framework helps to ensure that no single individual, no agency, or party has totally unchecked power. And so it promotes a balance of authority between the various branches of the government. We ourselves, the systems of checks and balances, govern three main branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. They each have certain powers they can do, certain things they can't do, and have ways to check and counter one another to make sure that we get the most balanced and fair things as possible succeed in coming through. They're supposed to work together to ensure a proper and a mature solution for any situation that the country faces, and that any changes that do happen do not violate the tenets of the Constitution that our country was founded upon. The Founding Fathers actually went into great depth and used a lot of wisdom to set forth the principles for overseeing of what each branch could and could not do for not just their time, but throughout the existence of the entire country. So, despite being elected, the first and foremost thing any government official is going to have to adhere to is obedience to the rule from the established laws of the land. However, as has been seen in republics throughout history, when those who are elected are corrupt, are selfish, they don't give a flip about what the rules are, then they will often choose to abuse their power by ignoring law and order to make sure that their desires, their wants get achieved, even if it hurts people. No matter how hard they try, in our constitutional republic, those who are in government have no authority to remove, to revoke, or violate the given rights of the citizens of the country. And unlike the confusion of a pure democracy, the rules for obtaining entry into the nation and for what is required of citizenship are also spelled out in writing rather than just being up for grabs to be decided by the whim of each generation of politicians. That is what the United States of America has. And the founders took great pains not only to think about the future of the country that was just at that point in time being born and is now reaching 250 years old, but to make a fair rule of law with respect and honor to the faith that they held dear. And by and large, as was put forth last message, that was their Christian faith. How the Bible put forth for people to treat others. One of the reasons why, even at its inception, that there was already discussion and debate over the need and exactly how to go about ending all slavery in the United States. They already knew at that time, we need to find a way to stop this issue and fix and address the problem. That's the nature of the Bible. It acts as a mirror. You look at it, you see an issue that shouldn't be, and you address it to correct it into a manner that is actually the true and right way to handle the situation. Despite the wonderful framework that we have for our government, there's always going to be those who they take the freedom for granted. They use it for vulgar or corrupt purposes. The greatest concern that we should have, whether you're a Christian or you're not, is that there has been some very, very obvious displays that a movement to try and attempt to overturn what we love and turn the governmental system into a pathocracy, and just in case, I don't know if it's supposed to be pathocracy or pathocracy, but still, whichever way you want to call it, it's a system of government that has been established by a group of individuals who are displaying obvious pathological traits, most notably mental health issues like psychopathic or narcissistic ways of behaving. This elite minority works to force the control of what they want over a society composed of the more realistic or normal thinking individuals, which of course leads to a governing body which praises mental instability and criminalizes any opposition or outspeak against it. They really, in honesty, tend to display a lack of real empathy or remorse for their actions and make decisions rather based on personal want or shallow emotional responses while employing oppressive tactics the way that an authoritarian regime would do to maintain compliance to what they want. Creativity and personal expression outside of government prescribed channels is typically censored or closed down. And things like manipulating emotions of the citizens are very common, as well as a disregard for any rules or laws. Historically, because they have come to power before, historically, these will often try to disguise themselves when they're in the process of trying to get this power with the claims that they are a democracy or some other we're for everybody ideology. Psychiatrists who have actually taken time to study such behaviors, such government style, cite examples of these politically oppressive, ignore the truth, ignore the facts, go with the psychologically abnormal development of governments such as Nazi Germany or Soviet communism, where significant presence of personality disorders or disassociation from reality could easily be seen among the leadership. No country that has ever gone down such a path has ever changed for the better, and it quickly loses all freedom it had. That is a danger that none of us, as citizens of the U.S., should want for our future. No other country should want a government like that. The government, as the constitutional republic, is the best we could hope for. And people should keep in mind that simply because one or a few try to abuse it or try to manipulate the law by ignoring or canceling what they wish out of it doesn't negate the truth that those freedoms are there, any more than the priest who molests children or a pastor who cheated on their spouse and treats people like trash negates the freedom or truth of that's found in all those who really are dedicated to their Christian faith. It doesn't change it. It's still there. The individual needs to honorably be dealt with for their behavior, but it is not indicative of the system that is currently in play being at any type of fault. Rather, it is the individuals that are causing the problem. Our constitutional freedoms are based from the source of true freedom, and that's what can be found from God and is right there for reading in His Word. Unfortunately, there's far too many people who spend no more time learning the whole of God's Word than learning what's actually in the Constitution, which does nothing but generate the rise of confusion and the ease of falling prey to false teachings. So, I'm going to invite you to join me again for the next message that gets put up as we begin to look into the first 4 amendments in the Bill of Rights, each of them individually, and you will be amazed how much it jumps out at you that, oh, this is very much the exact same kind of principles God set forth here in the Bible that is what's being seen here in the amendments, which is exactly what the faith of the Founding Fathers was. And so that faith left its mark on the laws that we have. The only ones who ain't going to like it are the ones who they don't want nothing to do with God and they'd rather worship evil. It can't be helped. You're going to find those. But we'll see you next time. God bless.